a week and a half after the election in Nigeria, there is great uncertainty in the election. What is going on in Nigeria? So in today's video, I'm going to talk about what this means in terms of business and investment from overseas, and how overseas businesses, overseas investors look at an environment before they invest in it. Nigeria is a special case because it has one of the greatest uncertainty right now in terms of a business, investment climate. So I'm going to talk about what this means from the outside, but I'm also going to talk about Africa and Nigeria, what this means, what this election means or should mean going forward with respect to Africa's development. So let me start off with what this should mean for Africa's development. Africa, 70% of the population is under the age of 35. If you have a business and 70% of your revenue comes from a source, then that is the majority of your source. And you have to do, if you're a smart business person, you would take the time to make sure you protect that 70%. It's just common sense. And then the other 30%, you still want to protect that, but not at the expense of the 70%. So when you look at Africa, you see that a population is majority young people, which means that in order for Africa to advance, in order for Nigeria to advance, the only way it is possible is if the young people make it happen. I am going to be frank. The old people of Africa will never, I know it might not like me to say this statement, but I'm saying it anyway. The old people of Africa will never pull Africa out of its tough state that it is in. It is the young people who are going to do it. Okay? So I want you to look at this strictly from an economic perspective. If you had two bank accounts and one had 70 million in it and one had 30 million, total of 100 million, and the two banks were on fire and you had to go get one of those accounts, which one would you go for? You'd go for the one with 70 million. Common sense. Everybody knows that. It's the same thing with respect to the future. When you're talking about going for the future, going to the people, make no mistake about it. Africa's future is on the young people. I don't care if the leader is 100 or 80 or 70 or 60. The people who are going to build Africa are the young people. That's a fact. If that is true, and we know it's true, how do you help the young people to build Africa? With respect to young people, why this is so true? In my hand is a little remote. This is a little remote. You can see the little remote here. This is all technology driven. If you look in there's a circuit board and a bunch of other things, but it's all technology driven. If you look at a computer, it's technology driven. A modern society, which Africa hopes to be, lives and survives and dies on technology. Technology. A modern society without technology is not a modern society. It's an ancient civilization. So if Africa wants to develop, the education of its people is a critical piece. Education in that they can understand technology. Because that is what is needed to build a modern, functioning society. Nigeria will never go far unless the youth are supported. It will never happen. I don't care. Listen, again, I'm not talking politics. I am talking economics. Who goes to war and leaves 70% of their soldiers behind? No one. No smart person is going to go to war and leave 70% of their soldiers, especially the 70 fittest percent. Right? So, what am I saying? I'm saying that the young people are the ones who are going to build it. Now, let me talk a little bit about young people, because young people push the envelope. That is their job. That is their responsibility. That is the definition of being young. You push the envelope. Young people are idealistic. Young people will take their energies and put it into something that they believe in. So the challenge for the government of Nigeria, whichever government ends up being the government, again, I'm not talking politics, I'm talking economics. What is your plan for the young people? What is the plan for the young people? Because the young people are frustrated now. We know that. They are saying it. If you listen, you hear everybody, they're saying it. They're frustrated. So how are you going to deal with the frustration? Because young people will do one of two things. They will get so frustrated, they say, you know what, I have to leave my country at all cost. So when you think about it for a second, Nigeria spends around $6,000 US to educate a child from young age to high school. $6,000. Now, when the country does not provide opportunities for that child, and that child leaves Nigeria, what has just happened? Nigeria is $6,000 poorer. In other words, brain drain. So if young people are frustrated, they're going to look for avenues to escape. They're not going to sit there and just take it. If they're frustrated, foolish people can come and convince them to do stupid things. You don't want that either. That is not productive for the country. Nigerians have to work so hard to get around the corruption, inefficiency, and downright incompetence in their country. They're working twice as hard as the average American and seeing way less result. If it was hard work for Nigerians, they would be the richest people in the world, or one of the richest. So it clearly isn't hard work. It is hard work with what? For what? What is the result of the hard work? I said at the beginning, the young people are the ones who are going to build Africa. So my thing to leaders is, how are you going to engage the young people? Do you even listen to them? Do you know what their hopes and dreams are? The engine of your country are the young people. The engine, the real engine of your country are the young people. If you're not listening to them, understanding them, and create an environment in which they can thrive, you're killing their future and you're killing Africa's future. Because the young people is where Africa's future lies. So a wise leader would make sure, just like a good business person would make sure that they protect the 70% of their market, a wise leader would make sure they protect the most productive group of people under their leadership or in their country. How do you plan to engage them? What message do you have for them? How are you going to communicate that message to them? I'm speaking as a business person looking to invest in Africa. And I'm telling you that the kind of work that I do, I'm in the technology business. The people who I'm going to hire are young people. Let's get it straight. It's mostly young people. The jobs that are going to come to Africa are mostly young people jobs. But to build a modern society, you need technology. You need young people. And one of the advantages of having young people, that many young people, is that one, young people adapt to technology much faster than everybody else. And if you don't believe me, just give your child just your cell phone and see how fast they get into it and do all over it. So they adapt to technology at a much more rapid pace. Secondly, they don't have the tribal mentality that held back the country over the years. They don't carry that with them. You can introduce that to them, but they don't innately have that. It's not part of their innate thing. So those are advantages that you'd be wise to tap into. Now, as I said, as a business person looking to invest in Africa, it is the young people who are going to primarily be the beneficiaries of the jobs that we would create, and who would even understand the technology to begin with, right? We need people who understand the technology, so it's going to be the young people. In a modern society, you know, you don't get a job and you stay at a job for 30 years. That's not like how it works anymore. In a modern society, you might work at a job for 5 years and then you go into another field and another thing. And so there's need for adoption, you know, where you switch between different things. So throughout a career, you're going to go through a lot of different technologies and a lot of so forth. And that is why I'm saying that from a business perspective, the young people. And so again, I ask the question, Mr. Government, how are you planning to engage the young people? Our technology, Kubo.com, is a trading platform. It's a technology-built platform. A significant chunk of the jobs coming through there requires technology. Even manufacturing requires technology, which is a lot of the things that are going to be sold on that platform. Again, all those jobs are going to require some level of technology. If Africa hopes to compete with any other continent, it has to step up its game. No more business as usual, no more politics as usual. It has to step up its game. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the prospects for Nigeria. So 93% of Nigeria's foreign exchange comes from oil. That means that Nigeria is a petrostate for that, because if 90% of your revenue, or over 90+% of your foreign exchange come from oil, it means that you are a petrostate for all intents and purposes. That's where you get most of your money. I have a question for the leadership of Nigeria, now and in the future. In other words, present leadership and forward leadership. I have a question. Before I ask the question, let me lay the premise for the question. In the United States and in China, two of the most powerful and biggest markets, and certainly in Europe, the level of adoption of electric vehicles is stunning. I read studies that say within 8 years, some 75% of the vehicle on the American road are going to be electric vehicles in 8 years. And that is true for Europe as well. That means that the demand for gasoline is going to drop significantly. America, just America alone, imports or uses millions of barrels of gasoline every day. When that demand is cut by 70% in 7 years, that means that all that excess gasoline, that 70% that's not being consumed by the cars, is there now for the taking. And there's a thing called supply and demand. If there's a whole bunch of oil or gasoline and the demand for it is very small, that means the price is almost nothing. It'll be cheaper than water at some point. Question for Nigeria. What is going to happen to Nigeria then? Because the majority of Nigeria's crude export will be converted to gasoline, diesel, and kerosene. Those are the biggest drivers of crude today, everywhere in the world. right? Then you have things like plastics, fertilizers, and so forth. But those are much smaller. So the question for Nigeria is, what happens when your current revenue source drops by, say, 50% from oil? Because remember, when the demand for gasoline shrinks, the demand for oil shrinks. That means there's going to be a surplus. And you've got Saudi Arabia who can produce, you know, millions of barrels a day. You've got new discoveries in South America that to almost a million new barrel of oil per day is coming on the market. What is going to happen to Nigeria in 7 years when the demand for gasoline, hence the demand for oil, starts to shrink? That means that Nigeria's foreign exchange earning, the primary exchange earning, is going to drop, which means that it is not going to be able to provide for itself. These are facts. Those of you who might think I'm making this up, go read. There's books, lots of things you can read about. Anywhere a significant chunk of your foreign exchange comes from oil, in 10 years you're going to be in a world of hurt unless you start to diversify. That is why you see Dubai and the other places and Saudi Arabia is looking to say, how can we divest or invest in other areas? That's why they're doing all of that. The other problem that Nigeria is also going to face, right? And by the way, if you're watching this, you can comment. Comment in the section and tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm looking at it wrong. Tell me if I'm seeing it wrong, right? I'd love to hear from you. But the cost of producing a barrel of oil in Nigeria is way more expensive than it is in Saudi Arabia. That means that when the demand for oil starts to shrink because people go into electric cars, it means that Nigeria will have one of the more expensive crudes out there. And the reason it's expensive is because the investment in the equipment for efficiency and so forth, Nigeria has not invested the kind of money it would have needed to invest in the oil sector, right? To build efficiency. You know, a pump that's 25 or 30 years old is not as efficient as a pump that is, 2 years old or 3 years old. So from an efficiency perspective, the oil produced in Nigeria is not as efficient and therefore not as cost effective as it is in Saudi Arabia, for example, or some other oil producing nation. Right? Not to mention you have Russia, who has a ton of oil that they don't even know what to do with. So, what is going to happen to the country at that point when your reserve, your foreign exchange reserves or foreign exchange earnings is cut significantly? That is a trouble. That is a troubling sign for Nigeria going forward. And if you produce something and the world is saying, we're going to cut down on the demand for it, you have to come up with some plan B. It's just the way life is. You have to come up with a plan B. So, with that said, Mr. Government, what is your plan for the next 5 or 10 years in Nigeria? Again, I go back to the young people. You know, manufacturing is the only way out. But to do manufacturing, Nigeria has to have a brain change. Brain change in the leadership and brain change in the people. Because efficiency is important. You know, if I come as a foreigner and I apply for a business license and it takes me 6 months to get a business license or 2 months to get a business license, I'm not going to invest. Not when I can go to Rwanda and get the business license in 1 day. That is what you're dealing with. You know, remember, you may have 200 million people, but Africa is 1.2 billion people. So you're a tiny drop in a much bigger sea. So don't get it into your head that, oh, we're 200 million people, therefore you might not come to our market. No. There are 1 billion other people that don't belong, that are not Nigerians. So business people will know how to, any country that creates the environment where there's efficiency and there is convenience for business people, that's where they're going to put their money. That is the nature of business. That money goes where efficiency and rule of law is, and stability. Right? Money goes there. So from a foreign perspective, looking in at Nigeria, those are the challenges we're seeing. We're seeing, one, that we're not sure in terms of the outlook of the government. There has not been, in the last, I'm going to say, 6 or so years, a plan laid out for Nigeria in terms of where Nigeria needs to be economically, and where the business people and the business investors can look at it and say, okay, we see the plan that the government has long-term, short-term, medium, and long-term. And therefore, we can come in, we can invest specifically in these sectors, and then we know we're going to, we know there's stability that's going to come from it. We don't, if that plan exists and well articulated, please somebody in the comment section tell me where I can find it, because I don't know where it is and I suspect it's not there. So from an outside perspective looking in, saying, hey, listen, this is what the country is facing. This is what the challenge the country is facing. Because Nigeria is a petrostate and most of its money comes from oil, anything that affects the oil sector will affect Nigeria's viability. In other words, Nigeria's ability to pay its debt as a country. Because 90% of the foreign exchange comes from petroleum or oil. Anything that affects the oil sector is going to affect because the revenue that comes from that also is used in schools, education, all these things. So it's going to affect the whole economy. Again, I asked the question, is there a plan to us outsiders who want to invest? We want to invest in Africa. We want to invest in Nigeria, Kenya, any other country. That's where we want to invest. But the picture that we're seeing from the outside doesn't look good. Because the most powerful, when an investor invests in Africa, they're investing in Africa's youth, whether you like it or not. If you're invested in manufacturing, modern day manufacturing requires, specialized equipments and stuff like that, which means you need technologies involved. Again, that's a young people's thing. We're not talking about farming. Africa does what we call subsistence or survival farming. And with subsistence farming, there's very little technology, which means that the cost of the things produced is much higher, the unit cost, which means that it's just not the best way to provide for a country. To the government of Nigeria, is there a white paper anywhere that you can point us to that outlines the plan ahead for Nigeria? How to transition from a petrostate to a manufacturing state? Is there a white paper anywhere? And if the white paper is there, is the white paper being acted on by anybody in current government and the future government? In other words, Africans are famous for having lots of papers, but they never use them. If you give me a plan to build a house, and I never read that plan, there is no way I'm going to build a house that matches what's in the plan. I have to read the plan. So I'm asking the question, is there any place, and you can put this down in the comment section, please. Is there any place where there's a white paper or white papers that outline how the government of Nigeria, present government and future government, plan to transition the country from a petrostate, which is going to be in trouble because, again, the demand for gasoline is going to shrink over the next 10, 15 years drastically. Global warming is seen to it. If you don't believe me, there's a thing called global warming, and the rest of the world, including China. As a matter of fact, China is racing to see that they control the electric car market. And so as China goes, India follows, and Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, all these other countries are going to follow the same pathway. But what is Africa following? What is the pathway that Africa is following? Is there a pathway for Africa to follow? I ask the question again for the third time. Is there a white paper anywhere or a government policy document that describes how Nigeria is going to transition from an economy dominated by oil to an economy dominated by manufacturing? Remember, the oil sector only, even if it was 100% efficient, only employs a tiny percentage of the people. So, even if Nigeria's oil was 100% efficient and they invested big money into it, the number of people that it employs is very small. So what happens to all these other young people? What prospects do they have? So you still have to come up with a plan, right? And what I'm telling you is not, you know that the oil sector is not like that. But I'm just telling you, for those who are skeptical of what I'm saying, I am just asking, go look up the numbers and see what number of percentage of people are employed in the oil sector. And you can, by the way, don't just do it for Nigeria, do it for Saudi Arabia, do it for any oil producing country. You'll see that only a small percentage of the population is involved in the oil sector. That means that the whole of the rest of Nigeria only produces about 6% of Nigeria's foreign exchange revenue. Whatever number you come up with, subtract that from 210 million. The rest of those people, all of them combined, only produce around 8% of Nigeria's foreign exchange earning. That is not a sustainable model. We all know that. The question is, what is the plan for it? That is why I'm asking about the white paper. For that to happen, lots of things have to happen. The mindset of the people have to change, the leadership have to change, and the people have to change. Because you cannot have where somebody comes and applies for a piece of a building permit or a business license and it takes months. You cannot have where once you set up your business and you're going to import stuff, that you have to pay bribe at customs. No modern society functions that way. You either pay the people at customs the right amount of money so they don't have to take bribes, or you tell the prospective investors, please don't come. So these are challenges that are facing the country. All right? The picture doesn't look good. And the final thing I'm going to talk about in terms of what a foreign investor looks for is just outright what we call stability. When you invest in anything, one of the most important criteria is, will it be available and will it be protected tomorrow, a year from now, or for however long you have that investment? Stability. Stability comes in the form of what does the government look like and how stable is the government? The legal system. Does the legal system work, or does it take 5 years to get justice for something that should take 6 months? Do we have to constantly pay bribe every single time you want to get something done? That's called efficiency. If you're expecting that honest, law-abiding investors are going to come in and subject themselves to that, that's not going to happen. Now, you will get investors. You will get people who will come in and invest. But those are not going to be the people. The people who are willing to pay bribes and do all those things are not the investors you really want, because they're in it for themselves 100%. And if they're going to willing to subject themselves to the corruption and to the inefficiencies that are there, it means that they themselves would participate in those activities. And you eliminate a lot of potential investors. So, to sum all of this up, Nigeria's future is the youth. Africa's future is the youth. It is a wise thing for government to understand the young people and to cater for them. Any government in the world who goes up against the people who are going to be the best and the brightest and the ones who are going to deliver for the country, any government who does that does not have the interest of the country at heart. No, they cannot, because action speaks louder than word. So it is wise for governments to figure out a way to tap into the most productive side of, or the people in the economy. It's wise for governments to support those who are the only ones who are going to be able to deliver the country. The young people are the only ones who can deliver Africa. Make no mistake about it. They're the only ones who can deliver Africa. If you are 50 years old, you're not delivering Africa. I'm sorry. You can help, but you're not going to deliver Africa. Get used to it. You might not like me saying it, but that's a fact. I am more than 50 years old, so I can say it. You're not going to deliver Africa. It's the young people. They're the ones who are going to do that. Okay? So let's be honest with ourselves, right? Let's get rid of the delusional thinking sometimes that we have, right? Hard truths. Truths are hard. You understand? What I'm telling you might come off as being mean, or you might, as a government official, might get upset because somebody said it. But I am trying to help. It would be selfish of me or foolish of me to see someone about to, or a country or whatever it is, getting into trouble and not say anything. This is coming from a place where I want to see Africa succeed. This is coming from a place when I look at Nigeria, all I see is potential. But potential is not success. Potential is not success. Do you know lots of bright people die every year? They had lots of great potential, but they're dead. They die without accomplishing anything. So potential is good to have, but it is not success. Success is when that person or that country meets and lives up to all that they could do or be. That's what that is. So I ask of you, the government, and I ask of you, the Nigerian people. I've laid out the challenges that face Nigeria, in Nigeria. And if you want to know if a government is serious, ask the government one simple question in Nigeria. Any government. I mean, this government or the one to come, any government to come. Ask them one simple question. Ask them to name one country since the dawn of time, since mankind came out of caves. Ask them to name one country that has developed a manufacturing base based on generators. If you can name me one, then Nigeria has a chance. But if you can't name me one, then Nigeria has serious work to do. And with that, I wish Nigeria and its people and its government well. Nigeria, you have to get your act together. We, the outsiders, are looking in and saying, we wish the best for you. And we pray every day that you get good leadership, wise leadership. Wise leadership who do not muzzle the ox, as the Bible says. Do not muzzle the ox. Don't muzzle the young people. They are your future. They're Africa's future. They're the world's future. And with that, I ask you to consider all that I have said. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. We'd like to hear from you. We'd also ask you to kindly share this video. Share it with as many people as you can. Share it to Nigerians, non-Nigerians, Africans, anybody who will listen. Because at the end of the day, we're all in this boat together. We want to see Africa succeed, and we certainly want to see Nigeria succeed.